Today I am inside the Corvette. I told you that when I pulled the engine I was going to be doing some deletes and some rewiring and crap, and thought I'd show you a little bit of what I'm doing. I've got the wiring harness unwrapped going all the way to the back, and right here is some that I'm going to be deleting. These are the two twisted pairs that went back to the back speed sensors for the ABS and traction control, and this wire here went back to the skip shift, so we don't need any of those. And when I was pulling the engine, if you remember, this wiring along the back between the firewall and the bell housing was in the way. Well, you've got this group here, and this entire harness here I had already removed because this is the twisted pairs from the front wheels. So this whole section here will come out, and I've got it twisted back into the back, and then it will go that direction. So we're going to be taking all of this out. And while we're here, I'm also don't run the rear oxygen sensor, so that will be a set of wires going through this harness, and the same over here coming up from there. So we'll just leave the front oxygen sensor wires when we get done. Right now, I need to take a little more tape off and get these completely pulled out, along with get rid of some of these irritating brackets, clips. There we go, that whole section. The clip there. Well, I fasten these up with my own method. When she goes back together, that will be a lot more user-friendly. Or at least more user-friendly for this user. Okay. That was the coolant or the oil temperature sensor, so we want to keep that. Ground wire. I'll pull that apart in a minute. Right now, this whole mess was nothing but twisted pair. So, clip. That cleared up a bunch just right there. So now, gotta dig through this 20-year-old tape and get those wires out. Yeah, see, that whole section was just run partway down in there, then turned around and then ran back out. I don't think the wire is damaged, but it's a little bit stuck together from the exhaust heat. I know some of you have probably gotten cars that people have jacked with the wiring and you hate it and should leave it alone. Yeah, well, I can't leave stuff alone. I'm not selling the car, so nobody else is ever going to have to worry about the wiring harness. Unless, of course, I'm dead and then they get the car, and in which case I'm probably not going to care either way. But yeah, it's not going to be anybody else's problem. And I just like to simplify. It's probably why I'll never get a newer Corvette. I probably ought to just cut these off. But there's something just satisfying about taking a whole big run of wire out in one piece. Okay, now, I think I can move to the top. Oh man, where'd my wire go for the skip shift? We'll go back down. Hello again. There's my skippy shift wire. I also want to get into the computer, because I had it out a while back, and man, it was nasty looking. Why they put the computer outside the cab of the car, I do not know. Especially under the battery. Because I'm sure you all know about the batteries that leaked and right down into the computer harness and all that crap. Well, I've got the mat under the battery to try to absorb the acid if anything goes in there, but it's still, it got nasty in there in the computer. And it just, I'd rather have it inside. Now, when I take these harnesses apart, where you have wires that branch out at a certain place, I am obviously going to rewrap everything. So I zip tie joints like this to where I'll know when I'm wrapping to leave certain wires hanging out, so I can keep it pretty organized when it goes back together. I had this zip tied to a brake line. Boy, that was a crispy zip tie because I didn't use it. See, I mean, this stuff needed done. Whether you were deleting it or whatever you were doing, more stuff ought to be rewrapped. Problems of having a magnetic light in a plastic car. Well, I can probably take some vacuum line out somewhere too. Well, I need that vacuum line for the HVAC. Also, somewhere in this harness, it tied into the line that went up to the air pump. And that's long gone. Crunchy. Ow, hand cramp, cramp. Ow. Okay, I'm out of here. And there is your inner fender panel. See how dirty that is? That's all around your computer. It's in here in this inner fender. And I know you're thinking my Corvette is filthy, and it is, but I do drive it all the time. But that computer, the silver one is your actual engine computer. This is your TAC module for your electric throttle control. But that was in there and it was corroded to the original bracket. The original bracket broke trying to get it out, which went around the bottom of it. I took the computer out, cleaned it up, made a new mount to hold it in there. But on the top side, you have your battery tray. See, this is the little mat that's supposed to neutralize any acid, which I will probably be getting a new one of those. Then underneath, you have 4 bolts in this little tower. You take those out, then you can get the battery tray out. And once those 4 inner bolts are removed, you take this tray up and out. And that gets you back into more wiring harness. That will end up going down to the computer or wherever it goes. Possibly probably some of it goes into the BCM, but there's your computer right there. And I obviously need to get the shop back out. Do you believe those are all grasshoppers? How did grasshoppers get all the way back in there? Yeah, while I'm in here, I intend to, and it hasn't been that long since I've had this battery tray out and cleaned in here. But I intend to clean that out. I'm also going to, while I've got the engine out, I'm going to spray some fluid film inside the frame everywhere I can get. I don't want my frame rusting. And while I do drive it in lots of weather, I don't drive it in salty conditions if I can keep from it, because I don't want anything rusting and deteriorating. Dirty's one thing, but I don't want my car to just fall apart. I like it a lot. All right, I finally got all the twisted pairs, the 4 branches of that went all to all the wheel cylinders. It pulled up to this connector here that was along the passenger side fender. So I'm going to disconnect this, and then the rest of that goes under the fuse box and runs to the front of the car where it was all tied in. It was in that bundle that went over to the ABS pump. I need to move my fuse box to get to that bundle of wires because it goes all underneath it. So I'm going to undo the positives here from the fuse box and then the bracket there. And I should be able to lift that out because I modified it doing the high 4 headlight mod underneath, so it'll come out. Now, there was also a nut I forgot on the bottom of the fuse box. Loosen it, you can lift the fuse box up, slide it over like that. So that got us here is the wire for the wheel sensors. It goes into this little bundle here, works over, and then goes into this big bundle that runs to the front of the car. And so we should be able to get a big wad of wire out of that unit and get it down to more fan wires and some grounds, whatever runs over there. And that will be the bulk of the wires I want to remove. There's a few strays here and there on some other stuff, but wheel sensors and the ABS stuff was the main thing I wanted to get out of here. We are getting a lot closer to getting this bundle of wire out of there. Got in here and I was like, hell, I'm this far, might as well just take the coolant tank out. So pulled that out. That's got me back to all my twisty pairs here. And look, remember me mentioning the vacuum hose? There's part of it there. And I think this is what ran down to the smog pump that's no longer there. Now I know the other end of this twisted pair stuff is down in there because I chopped it all off when I took out the ABS pump. So we'll be able to take the twisted pairs out that way, and then we'll be able to take some of the other wires, because they're just cut at different lengths in the harness so nothing shorted out, and go back this way taking stuff out. So I'm not sure how much we're going to get rid of this harness, but it will definitely be smaller. Yeah, I really wish they'd have come out with one of these Vettes like they talked about when they came out with the fixed roof. They talked about making it a budget Vette. And then it ended up being the fixed roof and then the Z06. And it's like, I'd have bought a budget Vette. Well, no, I probably wouldn't have bought it because I wouldn't have been able to afford it, even if it was budget. But if I'd had the choice, that would have been the one I bought. If I was going to buy a new one, I'd go in and ask, what's the lowest go fast trim package you got? I don't need all that other stuff. I still got the old CD player in here. I love it. I don't need all that navigation stuff. Half the time I don't even want to know where I'm going. And when I do need to know where I'm going, I got a phone that'll tell me. I got a wife that'll tell me. So I really don't need my car telling me. Come in! What do you want?
Dinner's ready, asshole.
Dinner's ready, asshole?
Yeah, looks like
You think this thing will actually run when I get done?
Yeah, probably. Knowing
Check
you.
this out. This is all going bye-bye.
Is that all traction control stuff?
You got it. Got to get it all out of the front. Well,
You gonna put like a wiring loom and everything? Or
no, I figured I'd just put a couple of Band-Aids over it, call it good. Yeah, I'll probably hook it back up, cover it up.
I didn't know if you just black tape it or
I might black tape.
just the wiring loom.
You never know with me. Time for dinner. All right, we finally rounded the corner down here where we got to the wiring that I had cut earlier, taking the ABS out. I had just backed it up from that direction. So we'll start with the sensor wires. Get those out of the loom. There's another wire they snuck into that loom. So that whole mess is undone. I'm still going with the wiring. There's the pile so far I've taken out. I got really with it a while ago, and I had a handful of wires that went to the engine control computer. So I pulled it out, since it's just right down there in the fender. So I've got its two plugs here and here, and you can see the wire sticking out of it. That's all stuff that's going to be deleted from those plugs. Got a few more wires here that go back, look like they angle back toward the fuse box. I'll take them out. And another thing I found is I mentioned the vacuum line earlier. I'm sure, 95% sure that I've just got this terminated up front underneath. And it runs through there underneath that. And I found right there is the vacuum fitting. And that vertical piece behind it is your vacuum tank. Now, and see my poor computer? This runs the engine. I just hate it that they put it down there in the dirt. Same way with the tach module. It's pretty important. I would love to figure out if I could run that through the firewall and get it down there in the floorboard with the body control computer. I mean, there's room there in the floorboard. My wife's got short legs, so I could just move the floor out a little bit. She won't mind, especially if I tell her it was for the good of the computer. But we'll pull those wires off. I'm going to dig that vacuum line out, and then we'll see what we got left. Oh, and I did have another ulterior motive pulling the computer lines apart. Because in that computer mess, this is a project I've been wanting to do for several years, just kept putting it off. There is a hookup on the computer for an EGR, which this car does not have. And it's a 0 to 5 volt signal that I can monitor with HP tuners. So what you can do is put a pin in there, run your wire up to my wideband, and that way the wideband will be sending a signal to the engine control computer, and then I can monitor that with the HP tuner software so I could get a direct comparison of RPM, throttle position, and the mixture from the wideband. Very handy for tuning, because that would work all the way through your power band, where your narrow bands are just in a narrow band. But that was another reason I went ahead and pulled that out. I'd like to get that done while I'm in here. Hey, went down under this time, down there in the front, and look what I found. There is the vacuum line that was capped off that went to the air pump that's been gone for years. Here is the power and ground wire for that air pump. And here's a power and ground wire that went to the hood light, which I no longer have. So might as well get all that out of there too. But that'll let me take that vacuum line and we'll cap it down there where it tees in. So that's one less place, well, in a whole line to get out of there to avoid a possible vacuum leak. Well, look what I found. I followed that vacuum line down and it went into this small loom that also had two wires in it. And it goes to a solenoid, quality Delco solenoid, that apparently ran air to that air pump. So, not only does that let me get that vacuum line out of there, there's two more wires and this whole loom that goes up there in the engine compartment that I can take out. Plus, that middle line there on that branch can come undone and I can cap that. But this thing was all the way up inside the fender well up there. Had to reach up around and unscrew a bolt, get it out of there. They kind of had it hidden. Well, that worked even better than I thought. I was able to take that T out of that vacuum mess and just move the fitting from the engine up one notch. So everything there works. And that got rid of all of this useless stuff. We are getting really close to being done with the wire removal. What I have left is just the wires that I pulled out of the harness that need to come out of the connectors that go to the PCM. Now this unbolts from the PCM, and it has this little cover on the back. It just pops off. And that gets you into the actual connectors. And the PCM is marked. There is a green and a blue connector. So pay attention to that when you put it back on. But right now we need to get the abandoned wires out of here. And to do that, you need to take off these little, move the camera down a bit. Take off these little plastic, the green and the blue covers. And to do that, on each end, there's a little tab in that recess there. Push that in, you can lift it up. So I've got the one end raised. And there we go. You can take this cover off. That exposes the pins. And that also retains the pins, so you find the wire that you want. And you can push it right up out of the connector. Then go ahead and pull the wire out. And that, I think, was the last wire in this bundle to come out. And then you just put your piece back on there, line it up, and snap it into place. You're good to go. Now, I would go back in. I intend to go in and put a little silicone in each one of those holes to seal that up, to make sure no moisture gets in there. You can see the abandoned holes that they didn't use from the factory have a little filler in there already. So we'll just take some silicone and squirt it in there and it'll be good to go. So now I need to remove one from this other side and then I'll move on to the blue coupler. Okay, we're on to the blue connector now. As you can see, I've got quite a few wires that need to come out of it. And the way it comes from the factory is it's got that gray cover on and then some zip ties hooking in there. So we'll just cut that loose, pop that gray cover off. Now this gray cover just snaps into place. also snaps in around that bolt. Pop it loose. And there we go. I don't know that I'll put these back on. I'll probably just zip tie it together. It's just another place to gather dirt and keep moisture around the wires. So, not sure it's worth putting back on. I see how much nastiness that thing held up against that bolt. Then yeah, probably won't go back on. Same on this side. I'll just figure out which side the wires go to. Blue covers pop right off just like the green ones. Then I can pull all these wires out. Still need to find the one if this one has a wire for an EGR. So I can hook a wire in to hook to my tack. Or not to my tack, but to my wideband. But this is also how you would go about if, I think the 97, 98 models had a different PCM. And that these later model ones were better. And I've seen guys that went in and pulled all these wires, just like what I'm doing now, and put them back in the pattern that would be needed for the later model PCM. That way they could have it. As long as you keep everything labeled and you count the spots, it shouldn't be a big deal. All right, now I'm going to pull some more wires and then we can start putting stuff back together. If you do end up working on your PCM wiring, new terminals that you can just crimp your wire into are available. I bought this pack from EFI Performance Wiring. But I picked up that because like I said, I intended to hook up that one wire to go to the wideband. Well, I think I'll end the video here because that's the end of the wiring removal. I still have to wrap everything, but I'll wrap it as I put stuff back in. Because if I just did it all at once, I'm sure I'd find something that I wanted to route somewhere different. So I'll just do it as I go along, as I reassemble. I did get some parts in. All my engine rebuild stuff is here. So hopefully this weekend I'll get the engine cleaned up, get it start to go back together. Got a few more deletes. Got a hard line for the evap system to take out. I need to reroute some brake lines. And then I still need to take apart the torque tube and check it. Lots of stuff left to do, but the wiring is, at least the stuff is pulled out that I wanted to get rid of, and it is a big pile of stuff. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Catch you on the next one.